Hello and welcome to another episode of Building Minnesota Call of Duty. This is Ashley, aka MiDNiTE. To intro you guys, hope you guys enjoy the episode. We talk about agents in the Rostermania period. We talk about my origin story. We talk about Coach Saint. It's a great episode. Hope you enjoy. Make sure to follow all of the links down in the description below. Listen wherever podcasts can be listened to. There's an anchor link down in the description. Anyway, appreciate you guys listening. Enjoy. And you find characters through this. And one thing I'll say, and this is no diss, because I love a huge majority of the agents that we've worked with, because some players do have agents, some don't. Some high profile players don't have agents, some do. Some low profile, like it's kind of a variety who has an agent.
Which I'll say that definitely adds an interesting element. I think for me, coming from traditional sports where every player has an agent except for a handful. Every once in a while you get a guy that represents himself.
Really? That's crazy.
Yeah, it's rare, but it does happen in stick and ball sports. But what makes the system really interesting is where you have some players that have agents and some that don't.
Yeah.
So it's not consistent. And you almost want it as a team. First of all, you want players to know what they're signing. You want players to feel like they're in the loop, right? And that was one thing we always said to players, like, we want you to know what you're signing. We don't want there to be any surprises. We don't want you to think you're signing one thing and then 6 months from now you realize it's something else. So we always offered to go through the contract with either the player or their agent or whoever it was that looked at something for them. But it is an interesting dynamic when some players have agents and some players don't, because it just results in just different types of conversations. Or there were a lot of cases where we would be talking to a player, and then after 2 or 3 days of conversation with the player, then he would sign with the agent, and now you're working through the agent on it.
Yeah.
Which is okay. I think it's good. I think players should have agents. They need somebody to represent them in the situation. I think it's definitely a positive, but just the dynamic was very interesting when some players do and some players don't.
One thing I'll say, a majority of players who've been in the scene for a while typically don't undervalue themselves, and they're perfectly capable of operating without an agent, I think. There's some players who don't understand a lot of things and maybe need help or just can't be asked to do it, which is totally fine too. The agents that we're involved in talking to for some of the team members that we have, or even just in negotiations with others, was like, they're I don't want to say dishonest, but they're very salesman-y, which is very expected, right? They're trying to advocate for their player. They're doing their thing, right? But yeah. I ran into some of them who maybe didn't know who I was, and so I was listening to the call, and you could tell the other franchises that they're telling this to are probably like, oh yeah, great, and I'm in my head, I'm like, that's not true. He's not that. That's not his that's not who he is. What? You know what I mean? I'm like, and I obviously don't call shit on the call. I just say, okay, that's their pitch.
Well, it's interesting because everybody negotiates differently, and I think that's true whether it's in esports or traditional sports or anywhere in the business world. Our style is very much to lay out, hey, here's where we are with things. Where are you at? Here's where we're at, and let's find a reasonable number and let's go for it. I think, frankly, that's what happened with the first 3 players we had. Their agent, Russell Slayton, I think was very upfront with us saying, hey, here's the number we're looking at. And it was a little higher than what we were looking at. We went back and forth a little bit, but we ended up pretty quickly getting to numbers that worked for the players and worked for us. And I think it was very efficient. Some agents or some people will throw out either an extremely high number and think that that's going to get to the higher number, and I'm sure teams do it too, throw out an extremely low number and think that, you're at a starting point. Personally, I don't think that makes much of a difference in negotiations. I think people have their ranges. Yeah. And their ranges are probably going to be their ranges. And the more transparent 2 parties can be to say, here's our range, here's your range. Yeah. Let's get there. Let's make it work. I think it just makes it work pretty easily. Yeah, I think we tried to shoot straight the entire time, and not all agents were very sales pitchy or saying crazy numbers. Some were like, hey man, this is who we got, this is what they're looking for, you got that, here's the situation, here's our situation, boom, let's do it, because they've dealt with it before, they're experienced in it, and they know what to do. It kind of made, I would say, agents complicate things but also make things easier. It just kind of depends. It's a roll of the dice. Yeah, every sport has that dynamic, and it's part of making sure players have proper representation, and you want people to know what they're signing and what they're agreeing to, and to get the best value they can. And one thing that we talked a lot about with players and with agents was for players that were looking for max dollars and wanted to maximize their value. That's totally cool. There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, for sure.
And we respect anyone that that has the ability and has a skill and they want to market themselves. And there's guys that that are capable of getting a max contract. They should get a max contract. And if you've got, I think in any sport, if you have the New Yorks or the LAs or the big markets throwing big money at players, most of the time they're going to get those players. And I think that's true in the NBA especially. You see it a lot. The NHL, MLB, the NFL. I'd say the NFL and the NHL kind of have the most parity of the stick and ball sports.
Yeah.
I think this played out pretty similar.
Yeah. You definitely did kind of see eventually my inner predictions with a lot of things ended up being true. I'm like, yeah, I could see this person wanting to do this. Or then you would find out certain things about certain teams and I'm like, oh, I could see, why they would want to go there, right? And then same with us. People would find out, we had some players who, we just didn't come to terms with, but they were like, absolutely love your infrastructure. That's crazy that the Wilfs are they're going big for the HQ.
Yeah, incredibly supportive ownership group here. Can't say enough good things about them.
One thing too about the ownership that I've kind of really respected right away is they didn't just come in saying throw a bunch of money at it. Oh, I hope we end up with a good team, whatever. They're very involved in each part of the process, and with our team in particular, we wanted people who were about the grind, who wanted to represent Minnesota and wanted to really be a part of what we're building here. Because even on the staff side, this isn't too Rostermania, involved, so I don't want to get too deep, but the staff side is really kind of meticulously built as well. And I think that kind of just speaks to how we built our team, how we're building our staff, and how we want everyone to kind of view us as
Yeah, and we're in a really unique situation, and I don't think we realized this truly when the process started. But now that the league is at 12 teams and it's established and everybody knows who those 12 teams are, there's only 2 teams that are not an Owl.
Mm-hmm.
And the London team, their ownership group has a lot of background in esports. And for us, we're the new kid in the scene, and we're the new kid in class. And I think that presents some challenges, but it presents a lot of opportunities as well, where we're going to build this thing up from scratch. And I think that's where bringing you on, I can't explain how fortunate we are to have you as a part of this from day one with us.
Yeah.
We would have been fucked if MiDNiTE wasn't here and wasn't helping us out. I don't mind admitting
honestly
that.
It's kind of true. I don't know why I am this way, but I have a hard time just accepting gas, but truly this situation that we're both in, that you guys were in, kind of being the new kids on the block, me, the whole thing with Optic in the last 2 years, coming back, leaving Optic, having this opportunity, it just made way too much sense, right? For us to not do that. I can kind of go into how that came to be.
Yeah. Why don't you just start with where were you when you heard that Minnesota was getting a team?
I was streaming.
I've heard the story, but I like to. I think it's great for people to hear, and we also kept it a pretty secret. It wasn't something that slipped out. Nobody really knew the announcement was coming on July 1st when Minnesota was announced as.
No, I was completely flabbergasted. I have a few reasons. So I was streaming on my Twitch channel, right? And I was doing my thing. This was already at a point where I hadn't left Optic yet, but I knew, not to get too far down the rabbit hole on that, but I knew early June that things were not going to end well in that situation. Everything that has transpired now in August, September, in what happened with Optic, I knew was coming down the pipeline, right? So I was in my head, I'm I kind of talked to them about maybe doing something with them, but I was in my heart, I was I think it's time to do something else, right? And I didn't know what that was. So I'm streaming one day, and I'm going to try to find the Twitch clip. Hopefully, I probably swear in it. But yeah, I'm going to find the Twitch clip. But I'm streaming. My chat goes, oh my God, MiDNiTE, you got to check Twitter. Minnesota's got a blah, blah, blah. Minnesota Vikings, Twitter, check Twitter, Darren Rovell. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I go check Twitter, Darren Rovell tweets out, which is just crazy that he's tweeting about this, but he says, Minnesota Vikings ownership, the Will family, and Gary V are going in together to get a Call of Duty team in Minnesota. And I was double mind blown. Just at that combination of people, I think is amazing. I think the Will family just coming in, the strong ownership that they've shown with the Vikings, my favorite listen, okay, you got a Viking shirt on right now. Like, I've been watching the Minnesota Vikings with my dad since 1998. I don't care if that ages me, okay? I've been watching the team for 20 years since I was like 8 years old, right? So that's when I started. And I was so annoying to my dad. I was like, what does that mean? What's first down? What's fourth down? Like, I was probably so annoying. But that's when I started watching legitimately. So, huge Vikings fan. I'm just freaking out on stream. I'm like, no freaking way. I need to get a job with them. And I was already joking about that. I was like, hit me up, like that type of stuff. So, and then obviously like the Gary Vee angle, he's an investor as well. I was just like, holy cow. Like, you know, Gary Vee and I had like a super minor social media like run in before. That was it. Like, he knew I existed. I knew he existed, obviously, from the great work that he's done in the space. So to see him come not only into esports, but into Call of Duty, into Minnesota, it just, I knew that there was potential there. And honestly with you, my fear was with the situation I just encountered down in Texas with Optic, a startup. I mean, Optic had been around for a while, but this was like big investment money, startup vibe. Having like ownership who doesn't understand Call of Duty, because you guys didn't, I was like, man, what if it's another thing where they come in throwing money and they don't get it and they hire like 20, 30 people and hope it works, right? This was way different. I kind of like, obviously you saw me on Twitter, and I'll let you kind of share like your perspective of this whole thing, but I start tweeting at them, I'm favoriting them. Like, obviously, like I'm very prideful about Minnesota in general. So and the fact that it's Call of Duty, like not just like if it was Overwatch, I'd be like, oh, that's super cool, but like I don't even play the game, so whatever. Like, no diss to Overwatch, by the way. I don't know if that's like bad to say, but I don't play Overwatch. I think it's great, the league that they've done, but yeah. So Call of Duty, Minnesota, the Vikings, Gary Vee, what the heck? Like, I have to like at least shoot my shot. So that night, like I said, I'd had a minor run-in with Gary Vee. He like messaged me before that I rock. I think he noticed me, and I was like, oh my god, no you, and like, no you rock. And so I messaged him, and I just said, hey, shot in the freaking dark here. I as someone who's received a ton of these messages at this point, like they're definitely not annoying, but it's overwhelming. So I'm sure this happens with everything that Gary Vee's a part of. Everyone's like, oh my god, I want to be a part of it. But still, I shot my shot, right? And he said, hey, email me. And I'm like, oh my god, cool. So I email him. 2 weeks go by, nothing. I'm like, oh, right. It's cool, it's chill. Like, you know, maybe he's busy. Gary Vee's a busy guy, whatever. So I'm like, I'm still cool in it because I can definitely see it's not developing quickly. It's not like it's not a boat that I'm missing. It's just maybe it's not at the dock yet, right? So I keep like messing with you guys on Twitter. I think it's just you that was running the Twitter at that point.
Yep, just me.
Yeah, Brett's a jack of all trades, master of all of them, apparently. But yeah, so I didn't get an email back right away. I was just like, oh, whatever, you know, whatever. If it happens, it happens. You can't force these things. Then one day I'm just hanging out, and it was after like a particularly like bad weekend that I had. I was like kind of like not down, but I was just like, man, this is trash. I don't know what I'm gonna do next. I'm still keeping my boat afloat, but I have ambition that I want to like direct, right? I'm not a person who can like have no purpose and I feel good about it. So I get a message from the Cotterman Twitter, and it's, little do I know, it's Brett. I thought it was like an intern they'd already hired or something, but it was you saying like, hey, I don't remember what you said, but you said like, do you have time to chat today or something? And I was like, yo, Gary Vee must have like said something, like he must have met. I was like, oh my God, it's happening. And then we get in a call, and maybe you can take it from here, just kind of how it happened.
Yeah. So the story from my perspective, so we announced the franchise on July 1st, and obviously we see you commenting on our stuff, and, like, all right, okay, MiDNiTE's into it, and she's got a huge social following, and, at some point we got to get in touch with her. But because you had Optic in your name, I'm thinking she's probably under contract with Optic. She's still a part of that. And, I obviously knew, I wouldn't say I know all the ins and outs of the situation, but obviously knew what I'd read and was generally aware. So I figured, I'm not going to interfere with somebody that's under another team. At some point, we'll probably cross paths, and at some point we'll connect. So a few weeks go by, and every time we'd comment on some of your stuff and you'd comment on our stuff. We had this like little Twitter flirtation going on.
Yeah, it was like favorite here, favorite there, like let you know I exist because I'm verified, so I know you're getting notified, Brett. I know you see it.
And still I'm thinking that, you're under the Optic banner. So, I'm going to respect that.
Dang,
And
no, I
then-
should have like shot my shot
Yeah,
to you.
oh, yeah,
What the
yeah.
heck?
But then I listened to your podcast where you talked about the Optic situation and how it had unfolded. And at that point I said, well, it sounds like that situation is a little different than maybe I thought it was.
Oh,
so
for sure.
now it's time to reach
Yeah.
out. So at that point, I think I sent you I slid into the DMs, and just said pretty much what I just explained, which was, heard the podcast, sounds, understand your situation a little bit better now. Let's chat, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And when I recorded that podcast, like I had already decided that I was leaving. I didn't know exactly when it was going to happen and when I wanted to announce. And it kind of depended on like a couple other things just to make sure that it happened the way I thought it was going to. But yeah, when I made that podcast where I just kind of like opened up about my Texas experience, I knew like I'm not going to probably stick here and I can just start telling this story.
Yeah. And I will say, even just listening to that podcast, that was before, obviously, as we're telling the story, it was before we had actually met or interacted in any way. I mean, I was very impressed by how you told a really personal story about a challenging situation, but did it in a professional manner without throwing people under the bus or anything like that.
That's
and like
funny.
that was pretty, honestly, like that really impressed me listening to it, because that's not easy to do. You got to thread that needle.
Well, do you want to know like something funny? So after that podcast, obviously my co-host, we're both co-hosts of the same podcast. I don't want to say like my co-host, but me and Amanda do the podcast, and I say to her, dude, I don't know if I can upload this. Like I'm giving too much tea. It's too much info. I'm usually not this type of person where I'm going to go on blast. And I don't feel like I put, too many people who already hadn't been on blast. But, I felt like I just overshared, right? And like once it's on the internet, it can't go back. You already know that, Brett, but you'll learn that too. In the esports scene, it's very true.
If I said anything stupid in this podcast?
Well, I'm going to edit it.
Yeah, there's going to be some editing.
We probably say a lot of stupid things right now in this room, but we'll edit it.
Outtake video is going to be awesome.
Magic.
Like 5 years from now.
Dude, our bloopers are already lit.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait for the unfiltered Rostermania podcast we do in 5 years. Off topic, but so yeah, I was nervous about uploading. I was like, what if? Because I even thought because I knew obviously I thought in my head, Gary Vee hasn't hit me back. Minnesota's literally stupid if they don't at least talk to me. At the very least, talk to me, right?
Accurate.
So. And I was thinking that I'm not an egotistical person, but I knew they're going to contact me. I just don't know when.
Yeah.
And so I knew that it was possible that you guys might see that. And so that's what I mentioned to Amanda. She can back me up on this. I was like, what if future employer sees this video and is like, we don't want to take her on. She's going to talk shit once I swore. She's going to talk smack.
Gary swears all the time in his podcast.
True. She's going to
Fuck it, you're okay. Just
yeah, we're going to screw her over and she's going to light us up. It's going to be a bit I don't know. I'm a paranoid person like that. And I just, like I said, once it's on the internet, it's there. And so, but she was like, no, dude, I don't really think you said anything too bad. You kept it within reason. A lot of that stuff's been shared already. You said your perspective. Now you can move on from it. And that's one of the big reasons I did it was this happened. Here's what happened to me in the last 2 years. Peace the frick out basically later because I was planning on leaving. So then, we have that initial conversation. And my worry, again, like I mentioned, was these guys are going to be tone deaf. They barely probably know who they're talking to or why I would be valuable. I thought I would maybe have to sell you a little bit on MiDNiTE and what I've done.
We
and
did
stuff.
a little homework.
Yeah. I'm and I knew that too. Well, once I talked to you. So that first conversation, can you give me I genuinely want to know this. The first couple phone calls we had before we met up at a Caribou, what did you kind of think? Were you oh, let's take a chance on this girl, or what was your kind of impression?
I mean, honestly, from my point of view, anyone that's from as a new team, right? Just 10,000 foot view perspective. If you're a new team in a new market and there's somebody that has credibility on the scene and huge social media following, of course you're going to want to find a way to work with somebody like that, right?
Yeah.
But I think from my perspective, what I was trying to get a sense of is, what were you as a person, as a human? What would it be like to work with you day to day?
Yeah, am I really annoying or whatever?
Yeah.
Which is, yes, I am. I'm just kidding.
But for me, I think even in just the first phone call, just really got the sense that you weren't just the kind of person we wanted to do like an influencer marketing relationship with, right? Like you were the kind of person that we wanted to have as part of the foundation of this organization.
Yeah.
And I mean, truly, I said this, in a different context before, but like, it's not like I'm totally kissing your ass right now, but truly, like, if you had 0 Twitter followers and 0 social media following,
just
like,
the knowledge is still important.
But like you and your approach and your attitude, like that's what we want as a part of this organization, and that's the kind of people we want to build around.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it. One of our goals as an organization has been to bring in people from esports, from traditional sports, from totally other realms, whether it's entertainment or brands or whatever, and of a group of people that can work together, bring their perspectives, check their egos at the door, and build something really cool and really unique. And I think that's one of the things that, as the only team in the league that's not an OWL, and also 10 of the 12 teams in OWL, and the other one having a lot of esports experience built in, we needed to make sure that we found the right people to bring in that had that esports experience.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we were incredibly lucky that it was somebody that was from Minnesota.
In your backyard.
Yeah, in the backyard.
Passionate.
Yeah.
That's a big thing too.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
you see, like, what I saw on the scene was like consultants who are like, they think they know everything and they're going to come in, they're going to try to sell you on a bunch of stuff or try to let you know. And it's like, that's not my vibe. Like, that's why I think when I was initially talking to you and we were talking about a lot of the initial things, like, I'm doing a little bit of everything right now. Like, eventually I'm going to get into a focused role, which we'll talk about another time. Yeah. And it's pretty obvious what it's going to be, but whatever. I just didn't want you guys to think that I was like a quick, like, flash in the pan. Like, I wanted to show that I was like if I am gonna leave Optic, and I've been saying this, like, my friends will back me up on this, like, I've been saying I want a real job in esports. I don't just want to be a streamer. I love streaming. It's a huge part of my life, but when you've done kind of the same thing, you're just kind of keeping afloat. I just turned 30, right? Like, it's time for me to really, like, evolve, go to the next step. I have all this knowledge of the space. I miraculously, like, I'd moved home just because I knew I wanted to be home. I didn't know, like, if there was a job opportunity in Minnesota for me. I just knew I was going to keep doing what I was doing. And just, I don't know. I had to pinch myself for the first, like, month of working with you guys because it just makes way too much sense. And it's too, like, my dad says this, and he's not taking anything away from me, but he's like, man, you are lucky. Like, so you have just gotten a couple of really good breaks along the way and really capped apart. The important part is here, people, that I want you guys to take away from this is, luck is when preparation meets opportunity, and you need to take that opportunity. If you get a little lucky, you put your full best foot forward. And so that's why, like, in our first couple initial conversations, then when we met at Caribou, I was like, oh, this guy actually, like, Brett is super, like, easy to talk to. I've talked to tons of people in this industry, especially, like, those, like, suit type guys who come in and they're like, they're really nice to you, and it's like feels weird. You're like, what are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not talking to me like a person. You're just talking to me like a business model. You know what I mean? And you guys, like, have just immediately been, like, down to earth. Here's what we want to do. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's our plan. Let's fucking go. And for me, I'm the same way. Like, I'm like, okay, give me purpose, give me drive. And I'm so driven for this. Like, let's fucking go. It makes way too much sense for me to be here. It's been amazing so far, truly. And I feel really lucky, but also like I'm prepared.
And it really goes both ways, because I mean, we're incredibly lucky to have had the opportunity to work with someone with your credibility in the scene and your skill set. And I mean, it just couldn't say enough good things about the work you've done so far. I mean, we would have had to, who knows what we would have done to get through Rostermania.
I know what you guys would have done. You would have gone to, like, probably, like,
we had a shotgun marriage with a GM or a coach.
Yeah.
You know,
just
hired
a
GM or a coach after, like, 2 phone conversations and hope for the best.
Throw a shitload of money at someone you think is really good in the scene based on maybe something you heard from, like, someone.
Yep.
And I met him once at Champs, so they're cool. Let's hire him.
Though an interesting side story. So, Saint Brian Borowska,
our coach,
he was one of the first coach candidates that I spoke to. I think even before we got you involved.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it really is. And I had 2 conversations with him and had a really good vibe with him, and really liked where he was coming from and kind of his view on the change in format and what it was going to be like with the new franchise model. And then our ownership group spoke with him early on. And then after champs, based largely on your recommendation, we said, you know what, we're going to hold off on coach hiring. We're going to go focus on the start of the roster first, and then work with those players to figure out what coach best fits their situation. And then we re-engaged with Saint at that point. And our players had him, at the top of their list. And, we had another couple conversations, brought in the rest of our ownership group. And every step along the way really felt like Brian was really the guy that we wanted to partner with on this for the future and to build this thing up with us on the competitive side.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how you come across these different characters and you say, oh, yeah, that guy could be cool. And then it turns out, oh, he's really perfect for what we're doing. But you do want to suss that out, right? You don't just want to say, yes, you're a person, let's hope it works, right? Because even I could tell you guys were sussing me out a little bit, not intensely, but
you talk about preparation meets opportunity. We like to be very thorough about things, and before we had that first conversation, I had assumed, had followed you on Twitter for a while and listened to a couple podcasts, and it was funny. I think I might have even said this to you the first conversation. I listened to a bunch of your stuff at that point, so I felt like we had a couple conversations. Yeah. It was the first time we were actually talking.
Yeah, that definitely happens with me a lot. People are like, oh yeah, and that's always kind of it's like an interesting dynamic where you can tell they have just so much more information on you than you have on them, so you're kind of like, yeah, cool.
But I was upfront about it. I said, hey, I listened to the podcast.
And then when you said that, I was like, oh my god, did he look at my videos from 2011? Please no, 10 years ago.
I wouldn't say I went back that far right away.
Yeah, no, definitely. I knew that they would do their homework on me, and I've over the years is becoming a brand or just more professional. And just growing as a person, you start to evolve. If you're still doing the same things or talking the same way that you did when you were 20, you're not evolved, and people know that, right? And so I think anyway, that's the thing that kind of I think really just made you guys serious about me and me serious about you, is because you even asked me, you were like, so you're looking for long term, and I was like, dude, yes, I want to get on the ground level of this thing and let's do it all the way.
Which is awesome. And like I said before, even if you had said I'm not really sure, or, I'm just looking for something short term, hey, we would have found a way to work with you, whatever it was you were looking to do.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But it was just amazing how much what you were looking for was exactly what we needed as an organization, of someone to help us build this thing from day one.
Yeah, it's definitely it's just perfect. And I think even one kind of cool tidbit, I guess, a lot of people might find interesting, is because you guys came in from traditional sports, right? So you said, okay, Ashley, who do we look for GM? And part of the time frame for that was already really rough, because it was you had to wait till after champs to really
it was
talk to all, and then it's Rostermania is happening in 2 weeks, so do you really just say, hey GM, hope you work out, you're let's get a GM, oh okay, well let's get a coach, and then that's how we'll build our team. And I was like, listen, you can do that, and that's very traditional sports vibe, but how the players operate, they're cliquey. They're very cliquey. And it's okay, because everyone's comfortable with who they're comfortable with, but it's not like professional sports where you say, hey, guys, you've been teaming with him too long, come over here, right? And so certain players gravitate to certain coaches and vice versa, all that. We've definitely learned that, in the past, I think 3 weeks, which feels like 3 years.
It really does.
And yeah, I think it kind of helped give you guys perspective early on, how really this is going to work. And now that, we signed our core, 2 or 3 people, and we were okay, now Saint, definitely makes sense, because the players already like him, we already like him, but we just need to make sure that we're really meticulous in who we pick. When we pick a person, we decide, if we take the time to pick them, we're saying, you're on our team, let's go. We're a family now. That's even the players already, they feel the family vibe already. And I know every organization is going to say, yeah, family, yeah, I hope it, yeah. You know what I mean? But truly, we're proud of the people that we brought on so far, and that we're going to continue to bring on. So, we've had a great time building this thing so far. We're going to keep you in the loop. Obviously, we want to come out with new episodes regularly on this. So make sure to subscribe to all our channels. Subscribe to the YouTube. Follow the Twitter. There's Instagrams. There's Facebooks. There's TikToks. There's a Discord you should join. Like, there's links.
And let us know in the comments what topics you want us to talk about. Like we said, we want this to be something that, that you're going to enjoy watching. We want to be as transparent as possible, and tell us what you want to hear about. We'll share what we can. Some stuff might not be able to talk about, but
I'm definitely down to share as much as Brett will let me. No, I'm just kidding. There are certain rules, and we just want to be kind to everybody involved in the situation, because Rostermania is a big deal, and there's we just touched the tip of the iceberg this time. Let us know what kind of topics or specific things you'd want us to maybe elaborate on, and we can definitely include that in the future episodes. So expect guests in the future, as well as kind of Brett and I just shooting back and forth. But until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. Appreciate you.